Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the president of Wonderly Lights, Brian Garrison. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Frank. Excited to be here.
Thanks, Brian. All right, well, tell us about Wonderly Lights. Tell us about the origin of this company.
Sure. Wonderly Lights, fourth brand in the Buzz Franchise Brands portfolio, so pretty excited about it. It's in its third year. Will be our third year anniversary this coming summer here in a couple of months. We're in the outdoor premium lighting space, and it's a brand we started with a very deliberate entry into kind of the holiday light market. So kind of you think about this brand, its maturity or maturation, maybe a better way of saying that, in two phases. We went after a very niche market initially with about, and grew that to about 25 franchise owners focused on the holiday light space. So very condensed season, very conducive to kind of existing entrepreneurs looking for kind of a bolt-on business, typically in the home services space. And now late last year and really in this first quarter, accelerating into what we're kind of calling phase two or V2, version 2, which is expanding to the full service outdoor lighting. So now you're talking permanent lighting, architectural lighting, landscape lighting, things of that nature, which there's a huge demand for. It has a lot of attributes both for businesses and for homes. And so really excited to be growing this brand.
Yeah, sure. Well, this is a huge advantage for franchise owners that are no longer just in the seasonal, the holiday light mode, that they have a business they can really have, access to growing year round.
Absolutely. Yeah, it opens up the aperture for us to bring on new owners, people who want to be in this business year round. We're still very welcoming and open to people who are really looking for kind of a niche business or maybe to dabble in the entrepreneurial thing 3 to 4 months a year. But our goal is to grow this or to blow this out as a full service year round business.
What would you say are some of the most common bolt-on businesses to a Wonderly Lights franchise?
Good question. So, think about seasonal businesses that maybe they see a big dip in the October to January timeframe. So that could be painting businesses, that could be pest control businesses, that could be landscape and lawn care businesses, roofing companies. So a lot of businesses that, they might have the infrastructure, it might be a warehouse, vehicles, field technicians, even office staff, and they're trying to figure out what to do with them in the off season. And so that gives us that opportunity. And I think that's been a successful incubation strategy for us. But now we're definitely looking to go full service, go full market, if you will. Another one would be pool cleaning. And I say that very deliberately because we also have a pool cleaning business. So there's some interest there on the Buzz side. So yeah, but that would be an example of seasonal businesses that might be looking to get into something in the holiday season.
Okay. Now, when I think of a platform business like a Buzz Franchise Brands, I typically think that these platforms usually find a great founder of an emerging company, and they say, "Oh, this is a fantastic business to add to our portfolio," and maybe they've already franchised, or maybe they're franchising them. But with Wonderly, you mentioned incubation, and I had not heard this before, where you guys started this from the. So, would you share with the audience a little bit about what you guys did with Wonderly that I think is pretty different?
For sure. And actually, there's even a nuance there that the audience might find interesting. So, Buzz started originally with a company called Mosquito Joe, so outdoor pest control. That was, franchising wise, we incubated that, but that was an existing business. It had a run rate or a run history here in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area where we're based. And so that business had been in existence as a self-sustaining small business entity, couple of founders for 3 or 4 years. When kind of our founder, Kevin Wilson, kind of conceived of the idea of acquiring that business and then franchising it, rebranded it, raised the capital, launched it. Successful, still very successful company. We used that kind of history and established what it became Buzz Franchise Brands, and felt like we had a core nucleus of people here that we could start other businesses in that space where we felt comfortable in the home services line. And so we kind of did that with Pool Scouts and Home Clean Heroes, our other two home service brands. Pool Scouts, as the name implies, residential pool cleaning. Home Clean Heroes, residential cleaning, like a Molly maid or 2 maids and a mop. And that was building them from the ground up. starting a local business, seeding it with people and money, growing that business, taking the learnings and starting the franchise. We effectively did the same thing with Wonderly, but we had a little bit of a nuance, which is we partnered with 3 existing Holiday Light businesses that were willing to convert their businesses to franchising. So that provided the nucleus and some of the expertise and growth that would typically take us, say, 3 years to grow and develop internally to accelerate our launch into franchising. So we took those individuals, their successful businesses, built kind of the operating model around them and around their experience, and then brought it to market in basically in the span of 6 months, went from, 0 to 15 franchise owners. And then last year, in the last year and a half, we've added another 10 owners. So now, as we make this pivot to V2, we're at 25 owners, 15 states, across 15 states, and largely in the eastern half of the U.S., and about 40 open locations. So pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you pulled off 2 big challenges. Number 1, incubating something from nothing. And number 2, being involved in the conversion business is not easy.
Yes, definitely some challenges there, but good partners. They're engaged both as franchise owners in growing their own businesses, but also in providing kind of some of the technical know-how and operational support to our franchisees, in addition to helping us build the nucleus of a team here in Virginia Beach.
What are your thoughts on conversion franchises overall, of folks that are running a mom and pop business that convert to a Buzz franchise brand? Is that something you typically look at, or are they mostly just first-time business owners or multi-unit operators?
Yeah, so our experience with conversion franchise is pretty limited. We have not converted in any of our other businesses. We've looked at it in a number of different timeframes. And, usually it's hard to kind of find the right set of agreements or whatever, the right partnership.
Sure.
In this case, we were able to make it work. And so it really gave us the launching platform we needed. It's not something we spend a lot of time focused on. We're more looking for multi-unit or multi-brand franchising owners, or initial small business owners who really just want to break into franchising.
All right. First off, tell me about your franchise journey. How did you get here?
Yes, I did not expect to get into franchising. I think that's probably a common theme across the industry.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt, right? And then also, most people don't ever realize just how widespread the franchising business model is, how many industries it spans, the size of the franchising industry when you look at it as a portion of the, kind of the U.S. GDP, if you will. But for me personally, I actually spent most of my professional career in the military, so I'm a retired naval officer. Went into management consulting when I retired, so spent about 3 years with one of the larger consulting firms doing a variety of private sector kind of engagements, and really gave me a chance to kind of cut my teeth in the private sector. And then had the opportunity to join Kevin and his team, Kevin Wilson, our founder, with Mosquito Joe. And so that was, if you had asked me 10 years ago, because actually next month will be my 10th year with Buzz.
Congrats. That's amazing.
Yeah. So if you had asked me 10 years ago, what do you think about franchising? Do you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur? The answer to both would have been not interested and no. I don't really consider myself an entrepreneur, but I think it turns out that anybody who's led teams, solved problems, managed people, had a goal, whether long-term or short-term project management, that's essentially what entrepreneurship is. You need a vision, you need a goal, you got to manage the team, you got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and tackle any problem that comes up. You can't hide when you're an entrepreneur, right? The buck stops with somebody, and if it's a small business, it's going to stop with you if you have
Absolutely.
And so, I found ultimately that a lot of what I had done in the military, as far as managing people, leading people, managing projects, and then my, 3 years in consulting gave me kind of the private sector, foundation, if you will, and it's been very transferable. And so I get excited in franchising because when I joined Mosquito Joe, then Buzz, we were 10 or 12 people. We're now 75 people here in the corporate office. One brand, we're now 4 brands, and we're looking to grow those brands, maybe eventually add another brand, although that's not the focus here in 2025. But it's been an exciting journey, and it's hard to believe it's almost 10 years.
Yeah, wow. Well, I mean, you were cut out for franchising with that background. Obviously, leadership, teamwork, systems and processes, all of that lends itself perfectly for franchising.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, especially the processes, the systems, you're very comfortable. I think veterans are very comfortable in franchising because doesn't matter what you did in the military. You had, at some point, you had some autonomy. You had to solve some problems, but you're always cognizant or aware that you're working within the guardrails of a larger organization with a bigger purpose. And so whether you're on the franchisor or the franchising side, veterans tend to be very comfortable operating in the franchising space.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, back to Wonderly here. So you guys officially kicked Wonderly off in 2022, right?
Yes.
When did you know you were onto something big with this? Because you've had tremendous success in here in these 3 years.
Yeah, I think, we felt very comfortable with our conversion franchisees. We saw what they had done, and they had varying levels of experience from 1 to 10 years. We knew there was a market there, and then once we were able to recruit some of these other seasonal business owners who, the beauty of what we did is these individuals by and large already knew franchising. So there wasn't a big kind of sell, if you will, or a need to sell. It was more, hey, here's the opportunity. We're putting the systems in place. You have the chance to get in on the ground level. What people do like, there are people who like to be, if you're franchisee number 25, Wonderly Lights, your ability to influence the system and or develop relationships are probably a lot stronger than if you're franchisee 1500 with, pick your, I'm not going to malign anybody. But obviously, when a system gets bigger, it's less of a family of franchise owners. So I think that's part of what has driven our growth.
Sure. What do you think really has helped a franchise owner being part of a platform where they don't feel like they're alone, or just, whether they're part of just Wonderly, but you guys have allowed something that is so scalable that you've proven yourself with other models. So talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Sure. I think, so to tie back to what I just said, I think our franchisees feel like there's a lot of camaraderie and support from within the franchise owner network. And then I think there's a lot of credibility with kind of the Buzz team. We haven't recreated the wheel here. We're a multi-brand franchising entity. So each brand has its own independent operating team. But behind that, or whether you want to think about it underneath that, the foundation, there's a lot of shared services support that Buzz brings with a lot of experience. So that's, we would say we like to call like our mini agency. We have a really robust marketing team led by our CMO, Angela Paul. So we bring a digital marketing team, a creative design team, a direct mail team. They support all the brands, and they're able to share learnings. They're able to optimize performance and help owners figure out the marketing requirements and needs in their community, or in their community. And then we have an analytics team. So we share a robust set of analytics with all our franchise owners, and it's very much a crowdsourcing opportunity, right? What do I mean by that? Franchise owner calls in, says, "Hey, Edward, I need to look at my data this way. Is that something you can help me with?" Sure, give me a day. Let me work through the algorithms, generate a report for the owner. Owner loves it. We look at it and go, everybody might like that, actually. We should probably share that across the system. And so they're getting that kind of analytic support. And then, again, not unique in this sense, but we have a good training and onboarding team that works across our home services brands. They're very adept at taking a new owner who's maybe never been in small business and walking him through those critical first 3 or 4 months. A lot of it's checklist type stuff, setting up the right banking accounts, getting your insurance, getting your IT system set up. But it's very comforting to an owner, right? Like to get through that initial process of what they would have to do on their own as an independent, get through that quickly. Now let's start worrying about growing the business and not about getting you set up.
Sure. I realize it was a bit of a loaded question, I guess, but my thoughts were about for these potential franchise owners to realize they're not really in the light. It's more than just the lighting business, because it's really not about lights.
That's very true. I mean, it's about being on a small business ownership journey. It's about, what are their dreams? One of our things, we do all our meet the team days in person, and not all of them in person, but all of them on a one-on-one basis, I should say. So, whereas some people like to do them in big groups, we bring the owner in. We want to understand, what's their real motivation? Always a financial component. People want to make money. They don't get into business not to make money. But there might be some other motivation. We want to understand that journey. We want them to make sure they know they're part of a team here and a family of owners. And that's why I think we get a lot of, rave reviews when it comes to our support, our accessibility, things we do convention-wise, et cetera, that really makes that journey for them enjoyable, challenging, of course. There's always challenges in business, but they feel well supported and they feel like there's a lot of opportunity.
There are always challenges. I'm sure kicking this off couldn't have been super easy. And I'm curious if you'd be willing to be so transparent as to share with us maybe when you guys first started, maybe what was something you learned that you decided, man, if I can go back and do this differently, I would.
Oh, there's probably any number of things. Let me think of one or two that might be meaningful. I mean, look, we've definitely had our stumbles, right? So,
We always do.
three that would come to mind is I wouldn't say we got the IT systems nailed right out of the gate. We tried to make some decisions based on other field management softwares we were familiar with. We went down one path. We had to make a pivot to another path. And so we did that, what we started with in 2022, we were switching in 2024. That causes a little bit of churn, a lot of work on the corporate team. We powered through that. I think we've learned it's tough to go into the product sourcing business if you haven't done it at scale before. But we definitely learned a little bit sourcing product directly from, in this case, China, trying to match colors and get the right quality versus price point on, greenery and lights. Again, lessons learned. We had to start somewhere. We were in it to win it. So we made a decision. We moved forward, and we had to do a couple of pivots there. So it's things like that you can't be afraid to make mistakes and stumble. You got to own them, move on, and get better.
We only learn from our mistakes, right? And we never learn from our successes.
It's a lot easier to learn from a mistake. If you've always been successful, you tend to feel like you're impregnable. It's not.
Right. Right. All right. So we've got 38 franchises total, right? In 14.
So owners, we have 24 owners, 40 locations. So a number of them are multi-location owners. Yep. And then we run a corporate business here.
Okay.
And 15 states. Yeah.
Well, the fact that you've got multi-unit franchise owners means something's going right.
Yes, that's always, not only when they buy multiple locations, when they come back and want to buy more, that's usually a good sign that they like the model and they like the support. I wouldn't hang your hat on that happening if you're an emerging franchisor out there.
Right.
But it is something we look at across all our brands. When people come back to you within a year, 2 years, 3 years and say, hey, is that territory down the road still available? I'd love to get my hands on it. That's a good feeling.
Are there certain markets that you're really excited about expanding to right now?
We've got a real good nucleus in the Northeast, so that's pretty exciting to us. We've got a few candidates that are looking at adding territories up there, so that would be kind of a good nucleus, good location. Excited about the Texas market. Have a few interested candidates down there. I think those are probably the two. The Southeast, for whatever reason, maybe because I would consider us right on the edge of the Southeast in Virginia Beach. We tend across all our brands to have really good presence in kind of the Carolinas down to Northern Florida. That's true in Wonderly Lights as well, and we see more opportunity there. So there's been some strong interest there.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, there's about 4,000 franchise brands that are out there. What do you think is attracting folks to Wonderly versus other opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, I think it's probably two things. I think this is a proven industry. So, there's always some degree of comfort in knowing that there's competition out there. You shouldn't be afraid of competition. It kind of proves that the market exists, right?
Agree, 100%.
Right. So there is that. But there's also, I think, a lot of fragmentation in the industry. So, the franchise concept screams or should scream, hey, more professionalism, more of a button-up process, whether it's on the marketing side, the system side, the customer experience. So you should feel as an owner or potential owner very comfortable competing with independents. And then I think the explosion of interest in permanent lights is fueling more excitement around this industry. This industry's landscape lighting's been around forever, right? But I think the two dynamics we like on the holiday lighting side is population's getting older. People still like to decorate their homes. They don't necessarily want to deal with it themselves. So maybe a drop in the do-it-yourself interest. And for the right price point, the idea of somebody shows up, they install the lights, they service the lights throughout the holidays. If a nor'easter or a hurricane or whatever rolls through, then they take the lights down and store them for me. There's something compelling about that. And they look super professional, right? So that's a really good growth dynamic. And then the other one is the permanent lighting. So permanent lighting, for your audience, in case they're not familiar, think about that as LED lights that are permanently mounted on the house, typically along the gutter or the fascia. Controllable via app. You can get through multiple light sequences. So you can, they're They can be used for the holidays. They can also be used for the 4th of July and everything in between. And that's just become very popular. And so we really like that interest. We want to catch that wave. And then the architectural landscape lighting business has been around forever. That's a key component of the real estate market. Everybody says it adds value, creates additional outdoor lighting, livable space, I should say, for the homeowner. So I think we're excited to move in that direction as well.
So what about or should say, if you go across the three type of lightings that you have between landscaping, architectural, and holiday lights, where do you project out you think will be this split over the next few years of your of your product alignment? Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for us, clearly we started holiday lights. That'll still be the dominant market segment for us in 2025, but I think that will shift over time. I think the real growth opportunities for Wonderly lights are going to be in the full service year-round model. So that would be the permanent and then the architectural landscape. And I group architectural landscape in the same vein. It's kind of a nuance of whether you're lighting the house or the landscaping, if you will. I think the permanent lighting probably will be the faster growth. The longer term opportunity is probably landscape and architectural.
Okay. And what about the type of person you think is really going to thrive or has been thriving in this franchise system?
As an owner, not a customer. Yeah, as an owner. Yeah, so I think it's somebody who's comfortable managing, a field technician force, whether that's subcontracted or full-time hires. It's going to be somebody who's comfortable kind of I wouldn't say in the sales, but sharing or presenting proposals to homeowners, because the ticket price on one of these landscape or permanent lighting could be anywhere from $2,000 to $8,000, in some cases upwards of $10,000. So either you have to find the right person or you have to feel comfortable sitting with somebody at their kitchen table or out in their front lawn and doing the demonstration of this is what I can do for a landscape lighting design, and getting the homeowner comfortable that this is going to add the value they want. And so I think having that at least familiarity and comfort with a little bit of design and then a little bit of sales. But candidly, we have vendors who help us with design if it's kind of beyond our corporate team scope. And then we have franchise owners who feel very comfortable bringing on a salesperson to handle the sales piece of it. So then it just becomes managing people and monitoring your numbers.
Okay, so you can go with the owner-operated or the manager-operated model?
For sure. We would always, I always raise a skeptical eyebrow at the manager operated model. I think it needs to be very clear between the franchisor and the interested party, the candidate, if you will. Let's make sure we're on the same page when it comes to what manager operated means. If you're going to rely on somebody to run your business, then you need to be aware of two things. One, it's going to cost you more money to grow and to get to break even and beyond, because you're paying somebody to do what the owner typically does. So you might need to extend your runway or your capital investment. Two, you don't want to be hostage to an employee. So good point. You put everything on a manager right out of the gate, and that manager falls in love and moves cross country, now you're back to square one or square zero. But then, are you truly willing to put in 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week into the business, or are you just going to tell me that and you really want nothing to do with the business? That's basically an absentee model, and we're not particularly interested in that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. But Brian, what's the investment range for a franchise?
It's about $125,000 per single, including the franchise fee in the first year of marketing.
And how big is a territory typically?
Territories, it's somewhat cost of living based. Effectively, it's 25,000 targeted households. And when we call targeted households single family units, but 25,000 and usually at an annual income above 100,000.
All right. Okay. So look, we're 40 franchise locations now, right? Overall.
Yep.
Where do we think this is going to be over the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, well, I could tell you what I want, but
what do you want? Let's dream a little bit.
I think we'd like to add, 15 to 20 owners a year.
Okay, that's fair.
Call it maybe two, average of 1.5 to 2 units per owner. Franchising, heck, probably better than I do, but the magic level is if you can get above 100 open locations, not many franchisors get there. It's hard to get above there. So we're at 40 right now. If we can add 15 to 20 a year, we don't necessarily need to be a rocket ship and add 40 or 50. It's hard to support 40 or 50 new owners every year. So we like that steady growth. And then, at some point we may jump on the rocket ship. But if you do 15 to 20 for 3 years, we're going to be over 100 units, and then we can really start scaling the business.
Yeah, you'll be there in no time. I love fragmented industries, and this one just is absolutely, perfectly aligned with that. There's
Absolutely.
so many independents, and you've got a great opportunity here. What kind of legacy do you hope this brand will be? I mean, it's a little different. This is not a founder born. It's created, in head of an incubation. But what do you hope this will turn into?
Yeah, I mean, aspirationally, we love all of our home service brands to get to $100 million, of system-wide revenue. That would imply, and if you get that on a run rate, that would imply you're probably 300 plus open locations. So that would be kind of just the goal of any brand we incubate. We have to be able to convince ourselves, whether it takes 5 years or 15 years, we can get there. So that would be the aspirational goal. But I also think we want to build that home services platform. We're at 3 brands now. We're not going to be a Neighborly. I mean, Neighborly is just incredible with what they've done. But we would like to kind of grow and provide more of that home services platform under the Buzz umbrella and just continue to grow. And I think so. Our legacy would be the Buzz franchise brand's legacy.
Okay, so back then about Buzz. What about folks that maybe are emerging founders? They own their franchise. They're thinking about the advantages of becoming part of a platform such as yours. Would you be willing to share maybe some of the things you look for and the company looks for when they bring a brand under the umbrella of Buzz?
So like an acquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think it's going to depend on a few things. It has to be the right industry, which you and I both agree, like a fragmented industry or an emerging industry where there's some competition, so you feel confident you're not out there on an island. So, like Mosquito Joe, for instance, there were 2 pretty established franchising competitors that gave us confidence the market was there. And then we were able to bring kind of our unique perspective to bear. So we have to convince ourselves the industry is right. Candidly, we're not looking necessarily to be an investor, so we're going to want majority control. And so I think if you're an emerging franchise or if you're a true founder, you're going to have to make that decision. And that decision is, do I want to bootstrap this, taking out the credit cards, hitting up the friends and family or whatever angel investors you have? Or at some point, am I willing to give up majority control to get with a platform that can help me grow faster? And that's a personal decision. And I think any founder has to think through that, should have some good advisors. And then the third is just like, does the brand fit with what we do? Like, we're going to look at how the FDD is structured. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, make sure you get good advice when you set up your first FDD, because if you make any structural mistakes in that FDD, an acquirer, in this case, Buzz Franchise Brands, we're going to take a hard look at that. How many franchisees do you have? Can we live with that agreement for 5 or 8 or 10 more years? Or is it like, that's just going to cause us a lot of problems? It's not worth our time. So thinking how you set up the brand is important.
Sure. Well, I'm going to interpret that as a founder and say that the advice to the audience would be, if you're going to franchise your company, make sure you go to a franchise attorney, not an attorney who says, I do franchising or I can do franchising. That's not a franchise attorney. You want somebody that says, I am a franchise attorney, right?
Yes, I think that's a great way of framing that for sure.
I always relate that to sports because I'm a sports guy. I don't want to have somebody say, yeah, I can play shortstop. No. Are you a shortstop? Don't tell me you can play short. No, we don't do that.
Exactly. I can do a lot of things. The question is, can I do it well?
Exactly.
Only a handful of things I can do well.
I know my wife would agree when it comes to me doing work around the house. I can try, but
That's true.
you don't want me doing it.
I'm in the same boat.
That's funny. Well, Brian, if someone was interested in learning more about Wonderly Lights, where would they go?
Yeah, the simplest is just to go to wonderlylightsfranchise.com.
Okay.
And they can find our website. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We're pretty much everywhere. If you just do the search for Wonderly Lights, reach out to us. They can look me up on LinkedIn. I'll respond to any personal inquiries and connect you with the right people. But happy to talk to anybody who wants to learn more about the industry and the business model.
Great. All right. Why is now a great time to be part of Wonderly Lights?
I think now's a great time to be part of franchising. First of all, I think a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of uncertainty in the corporate side of the world. So always nice to kind of own your own future. I think Wonderly Lights, the excitement there is you're going to be on kind of the ground zero of version 2, pivoting to full service. A lot of excitement. Get in on the ground floor and join an industry that's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, and you got a lot of great territories available. So,
Absolutely.
And that's not going to be forever.
Certainly, that's our goal.
Yep. I got one last question for
Okay.
you. I always end every podcast with the franchise tip jar because, as you know, the franchise community is so generous with sharing. So I ask you this. If you had a friend that came to you and they were thinking of being a franchisee of another brand, what would be a piece of advice you'd give them to making sure they're making a good decision?
Yeah, I would probably say two. So one is really understand the business model and does it truly excite you? The last thing you want to do is get into a business that you're, kind of neutral about or ambivalent about. Because if you don't have the passion fueling you every day, it can make it seem more like a chore than a journey of business growth and personal growth, right? And then the second is don't buy into the absentee owner thing. If you want to get into business ownership, get into it because you feel like you can run this brand and grow this concept. Don't be sold on the idea of, you only got to put 5 hours a week into it. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
That is great advice. Not enough people share that, but anytime I hear somebody say we accept absentee owner franchises, to me, that is a signal to run, but don't walk away.
I would agree.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Brian, thanks so much for being on the show. It was great seeing you again, and I wish you all continued success.
Outstanding. Loved every minute of it, Frank. Thanks for having me, and appreciate the time.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.